People like to ask me what will be the battle gimmick in the Mazah region. For a while, I didn't have a good answer for this question. The Mazah region project started out as a fun way for me to share my ideas for Fakemon with fans, and I never really considered things like gameplay or battle mechanics. Now that the Mazah region game is well underway, however, such questions have become increasingly relevant. A few months back, I introduced Mazah's first Mega Evolutions, and today I'm happy to say that Megas are back. We're back, everyone. Welcome to Subjectively. My name is Jack, and yes, today we're finally getting some more Mega Evolutions for the Mazah region. Of all the generational battle mechanics, Mega Evolving, Z-Moves, Dynamaxing, and Terastallizing, I have to say that Megas have always been my favorite. Not from a gameplay standpoint, as is often the case with me. In fact, as much as I miss the idea of Mega Evolution, I understand why it was only a passing fancy in the eyes of Gamefreak. It limits the meta, making it so that certain Pokemon were necessary in pretty much every battle if winning was your goal. If you're someone like me, who picks Pokemon for your team based on their visuals rather than their competitive viability, you would be out of luck if a Pokemon you like didn't receive a Mega Evolution. Granted, if one of your faves did get a Mega, it was incredibly exciting. But I know that there are a handful of people out there whose most cherished Pokemon designs will forever go without those insane buffs and exciting visual redesigns. And could you really blame Gamefreak? They couldn't give every Pokemon in the Pokedex an entirely new design, a new base stat total, and new ability in perpetuity. Instead, they decided to make battle gimmicks more universal, allowing all Pokemon to Dynamax or Terastallize, and perhaps other similar mechanics in the future. That said, and to my original point, I love Mega Evolutions. For the handful of Pokemon who did receive them, it was an exciting revitalization of familiar designs with a fresh new twist and, in some cases, viability in battle where before these Pokemon struggled. Now, for me, it's all about the visuals, right? Taking a concept like Charizard and expanding on it in ways that encourage the fanbase to look at every existing Pokemon design in entirely new ways. What if Flygon was part bug type? What if Zatu's 1,000-yard stare got even more creepy? For years since their release, Mega Evolutions have sparked inspiration in artists both young and old, and that's really what I love about them. Today, I want to share with you some of the ideas that were sparked in me, and introduce to you 3 new Mega Evolutions for the Mazah region. 2 of these will be evolutions for pre-existing Mons, while 1 will be a Mega Evolved form of a Mazah region original. We'll also be revisiting the design of 2 older Mazah region Pokemon to bring them up to date with our modern Pokedex and their soon-to-be Mega Evolution. Real quick, before we take a look at those designs, I'd like to take a moment to extend a sincere thank you to our amazing Patreon supporters, and a very special thank you to our super subjectivist supporters, Rose and Angel S. Our legion of patrons is growing more and more every day, and we really can't express just how grateful we are to have such devoted fans as would share their hard-earned money with us. If you'd like to join this incredible group of super subjectively fans, consider becoming a supporter on Patreon. We have great monthly rewards like prints, stickers, and character design lessons, all exclusive to our patrons. Any amount helps, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again, and now, let's take a look at those Megas. First, a familiar face. Skarmory, the Armorbird Pokemon. Skarmory is an interesting Pokemon, a remnant of a time long past when these designs were described as sprite work before being reimagined into the artwork we're familiar with today. In some ways, I miss that time. Pokemon designs were less grounded in reality and often looked like something dreamt up by a child. Maybe that doesn't sound like praise, but I quite enjoy how there's nothing specific one could point to in the real world that directly inspired the design of Skarmory. It is, as I said, as if a young child and a very creative mind described a beast straight from their imagination, a creature of metal that could soar like a plane but swoop and peck like a bird. All this to say that I like Skarmory, and I want to do its design justice when I create a Mega Evolution for it. Meeting in the middle between the sensibilities of Gen 2 Pokemon designs and my current style can be a bit of a challenge. Like I said, Pokemon like Skarmory have fewer direct influences from real life, whereas many of my Fakemon draw from very specific references. I tried to think broader about shapes, creatures, and concepts that I enjoy that would also mesh well with the existing design for Skarmory. I thought about the paradox forms I had recently made for Raikou and Entei. I was particularly fond of the pterosaur approach that I took for Screeching Sky, and the shape of the head. It made it feel not just stronger, but more bizarre, ancient, and powerful. Because the anatomy of Skarmory is so unnatural, that is, there are no clear joints on the wings or any kind of skeletal structure, I decided that I would do better to indulge in that lack of realism rather than fight against it. To further exaggerate Skarmory's razor-sharp feathers, I gave it a great cluster of blades for each wings in a manner not unlike that of older Pokemon such as Zapdos. My favorite Mega Evolutions add to the structure of their base design without changing too much about the Pokemon. This form felt stronger than default Skarmory, but it wasn't so different from the original that it felt like a permanent evolution. I decided on white for a secondary accent color to go alongside red. After I filled in the lines with flat colors, I not only painted in the highlights and values, but some textures as well. After studying how metallic textures are rendered in both modern Pokemon art, like the key art used for future Paradox Pokemon, and in older designs like Skarmory or Steelix, I had a good sense of how I could convey its polished metal hide in the style of official Gamefreak artwork. Mega Skarmory, the Armor Bird Pokemon. By rapidly flapping its blade-like wings, Mega Skarmory can generate a vortex of wind that pulls opponents towards it. If the target is unable to free itself, it will be subjected to a flurry of enormous feathers sharp enough to shred any foe to ribbons. If Skarmory battles too frequently in its Mega Evolved form, its feathers will eventually dull. It grows too unpredictable for even the most experienced trainer to groom it when Mega Evolved. Now, before we look at a new Mega Evolution for an old Mazah region Pokemon, we have to revisit its base form and primary stage. It was close to 2 years ago now that I created 4 new Dragon-type Pokemon for the Mazah region: Frizzard, Zarcoil, Sujip, and Sukabile. I was incredibly happy with all of these designs, and I still am. However, the rendering style of all of them has become a little, shall we say, outdated. I still like the concepts, the general designs, it's just the execution that needs a little updating. Primarily, the way I handle 3-dimensional shapes on all of these characters is what needs the biggest update. Sujip is adorable. A round little croc puppy with a big gaping mouth just waiting to be filled with food. However, the way I posed this key art confused even me, the artist, as to its true size and the scale of its proportions. Its midsection kinda trails backwards as if it's curving around, but I don't think that was my intention with the original design. It's not that long, after all. It was generally kinda hard to tell just how this character would move around in a 3-dimensional space. Revisiting this design, my main goal was to reevaluate the anatomy of Sujip so that its 3-dimensional structure was clear to my audience, and to me, for that matter. I actually did 2 drafts of this redesign. The first one had too much open negative space. Too much of its body was either blank green or blank red. Plus, I had a hard time conveying depth in its mouth, Sujip's most important feature. In my second go, I shrunk down some of the features that I felt were unnecessarily large in my last draft. The body, the legs, and the tail were not the focuses of the design, so I diminished them so that the head and mouth looked even larger. That way, I could embellish the head with all sorts of adornments and accent colors, and it wouldn't have to compete with the massive fields of blank colors on the body. The mouth remained the focus of the design. You'll also notice that I changed up the colors a little bit from the original. Nothing too significant, but I upped the saturation in almost all of the colors. I'm not sure why I made the original Sujip so washed out. I like these colors a lot more. Sujip, the Hunger Pokemon. Though small in size, Sujip have an insatiable appetite. Trainers are advised to keep this Pokemon away from their home, as they tend to have trouble discerning edible from inedible objects. Fortunately, their jaws are strong enough to bite through almost anything, and their stomach acids can dissolve solid objects like plastic or even stone. After a particularly large meal, Sujip will fall dormant until whatever they've eaten has been fully digested. I think it's because I like Sukabile so much that I had such a hard time redesigning it. In truth, I wasn't really redesigning it at all, just kind of updating it. Old Sukabile looked a bit too compact. So many of its shapes were rounded or soft, and in general it looked a lot smaller than I imagined it to be. Like Sujip, it also suffered from a lack of legibility in regards to its three-dimensional shape. I don't even think I fully understood how it would move or how its body parts all connected. The first thing I wanted to change was that size issue. So much of its body was all squished up in ways that made it look like an unusually large plush toy. I think the roundness of its shapes also contributed to that look. I made everything spikier, which already helped it look a lot more formidable. By the time I got to the colors, however, I found that I was still not entirely happy with this look. I enjoy the goofy undertones of Sukabile, the big head, the knowing grin, and the lumpy proportions. And yet, this Sukabile was still a little bit more of a stuffed animal than it was a frightening menace. I wanted there to be at least a 50-50 balance. I had another go at it, this time making the mouth on its back considerably larger than its head. I also got rid of the large, rounded spikes on its back and swapped them out for ones that were far more threatening. I sharpened the teeth on its back even more, covering the entire silhouette in jagged edges so that the whole thing somewhat resembled a thorny bush. Finally, I gave Sukabile the same treatment I did Sujip. I upped the contrast and the saturation in the colors on its body, which did a lot to make it seem more menacing. All in all, these were minor changes that I made to the original design. It's incredible though just how much can change with only a handful of minuscule tweaks. Sukabile, the forbearance Pokemon. Sukabile can go for months without eating. They're found lurking in desolate, unfrequented swamps and marshes in the Mazah region, lying patiently below the mud for the perfect meal. While they can eat almost anything, older Sukabile know that the most nutritious food is worth waiting for. Their secondary jaw on their back is big enough to swallow prey twice their size, and the corrosive acid they produce in their stomach is so powerful it can dissolve a car. Now for the Mega. I imagine Sukabile to be a Pokemon used by the highest ranking members of the villain team of the Mazah region. A final boss type Pokemon, something like Sharpedo or Camerupt. Not quite as strong as a legendary, not so overwhelming as the Elite Four, but formidable beyond a doubt. However, the Mega Evolved Sukabile would be a force to rival any of the strongest Pokemon in Mazah. This design would tip the scale so that Sukabile was no longer equal parts goofy and formidable. No, Mega Sukabile is just scary. I realized that there were several striking similarities between my new Sukabile and the Ultra Beast Guzzlord, and I liked that a lot. That otherworldly sense of terror that Guzzlord conveys was exactly the right level of scary for Mega Sukabile. I guess it has something to do with the fact that Guzzlord is also a little goofy. Something I wanted to play up in the Mega Evolution was the original inspiration for Sukabile's design. Chipactli, an ancient mythological creature described by the Aztecs as a primeval sea monster, crocodilian in appearance, that was always hungry and every joint on its body adorned with an extra mouth. I tried including mouths on the joints of Sukabile's original designs, but it made the whole thing too cluttered, so I resolved only to include a mouth on its back. The Mega Evolution, however, presented me with a brilliant opportunity to include the additional knee jaws. This also allowed me to add a secondary characterization to Sukabile, turning the mouth on its back into something like its own character, with a unique personality. Almost as if its insatiable hunger manifested itself in a creature of its own, that now has more agency over Sukabile's body than the real head does. I've always been interested in the darker side of Mega Evolutions, how Mega Evolving a Pokemon has negative side effects that bring out the more unpleasant aspects of a Pokemon. You can't leave Sukabile Mega Evolved for too long, or it very well may devour everything around it until the only thing left to eat is itself. This design took me a couple of passes to get it to a place where I was happy with it, but the final result is something I'm very proud of. Mega Sukabile, the forbearance Pokemon. When it Mega Evolves, Sukabile's hunger becomes proverbial. It cannot be sated, not by any amount of sustenance that it may consume. Instead, it seeks satisfaction in battle, unleashing waves of stomach acid upon its foes before crushing them between its massive jaws. It will remain in an agitated state until it reverts to its natural form, where it can eat and be content once again. Finally, we come to Mega Milotic. As disappointed as I may be that my favorite Pokemon, Magikarp, has not yet made an appearance in the Mazah region, I can take some comfort in knowing that its Hoenn counterpart, Feebas, will certainly play a role in the game. Though I cherished the arrival of Mega Gyarados when Pokemon X and Y came out, I still wondered if Milotic would ever get the same treatment. Like Gyarados, Milotic is also a very strong Pokemon, with an impressive base stat total, a decently sized move pool, and access to 3 good abilities to boot. What's more, its design is solid, not necessarily something I feel the need to change or even really improve on. But Mega Evolutions, in my mind, neither change nor improve upon the designs of their original forms. Rather, they bring into sharper focus the aspects of the Pokemon that we already love. For Milotic, this aspect would undoubtedly be beauty. Whereas Mega Skarmory and Mega Sukabile are ferocious and hostile in appearance, I wanted Mega Milotic to look as though out of a fairy tale. So beautiful that words would do little to describe it. So beautiful, in fact, that something about it seems difficult to trust. Like a siren luring a sailor to their doom, Mega Milotic harbors dark intentions. Powerful, yet elegant and mystifying. I used the fan-like shape of its tail to replicate the pose of geishas, concealing their beauty behind a tantalizing veil. I adorned its head with something in between feathers, fins, and hair, creating shapes both pleasing to the eye as well as somewhat frightening to behold. What I really enjoyed, however, was the colors. I've only just now started to include textures within the flat colors of my Pokemon designs, and it does much to elevate the concept behind each one. Mega Milotic, for example, sparkles like glistening waves. To capture that texture, I used flecks of color on key elements of the character's anatomy. Not too striking, we don't want the design to become difficult to understand at a glance, but just enough so that the idea of sparkling scales could be understood by a viewer. I think it may be that this design does not change enough about Milotic to feel like an official Mega Evolution. Regardless, I really love it. In fact, it may be my favorite of the 3 that I've shared with you today. Mega Milotic, the tender Pokemon. It is said that few Pokemon, if any, can rival the beauty and splendor of Aloremonda. In the Mazah region, only Mega Milotic can make such a claim. Its elegance and charm is said to be mesmerizing, disarming opponents so that they stare in helpless wonder at their foe. Mega Milotic is not merciful. It will strike down its foes while they are transfixed by its beauty and leave them crippled and broken. There ends today's video. What did you guys think of these new designs? Which one of the Megas was your favorite? Do you like the changes I made to Sujip and Sukabile? What other Pokemon do you think I should design Megas for, either Pokemon from the Mazah region or pre-existing ones? Let me know all of your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you again to our Patreon supporters. We hope you all enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.